Bob and Damon were playing louder than I was because they knew Trek much more deeply, much more thoroughly than I did. JJ and I think, had more similar interests because we were, frankly, more Star Wars people.
Nerdrotic.com.
In the grand tradition of horrific audience scores on Rotten Tomatoes for Alex Kurtzman and CBS's Star Trek, it looks like Star Trek Discovery Season 1 is at a very unsurprising yet record-breaking low for a Star Trek series. 33% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, it's been a while since I've done a Rotten Tomatoes video, and thanks to Star Trek Lower Decks, you're going to get one now. You've already heard from me. It's time to hear from the people. But before I get started with that, if you like what I do here and you enjoy independent content, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking and sharing the videos. And please do this with your favorite YouTuber as well. I'm sure they would appreciate it as much as I do. And I thank everyone for your continued support. Now, there are signs everywhere that the Star Trek franchise has been in trouble for a long time, and there are a lot of rumors out there, but forget those. Let's just talk about what we already know. Fired showrunners, going over budget, massive reshoots. Now, I'm not sure what went down with Lower Decks, but maybe they could have used a few reshoots as well. We also know Lower Decks doesn't have international distribution, which we will get to in a moment, but this article came out the day after it premiered. Emma Watts' top priority at Paramount: figure out Star Trek reboot. Now, I don't really care, but CBS is either dumb or they don't care about the optics of an article like this coming out the day after one of their new series premieres, the day after 23 weeks of Alex Kurtzman's Star Trek begins. Exclusive. Looks like Paramount's plan to make the next Star Trek movie that Noah Hawley wrote and plans to direct has been put on pause for the moment. Forget paused, none of these films are going to happen. New film chief Emma Watts, who managed many a franchise at Fox, is in the process of figuring out which way to go. Well, it's obvious. Sack Secret Hideout. Get rid of Alex Kurtzman. By the way, I thought Star Trek was a big, happy, united family now. I thought we were heading towards the Star Trek universe where everything is connected. I thought that was all taken care of with the CBS-Viacom merger. It's sounding like it's not because they're just mentioning Paramount here. Who knows? And honestly, I don't care. The pause on the Halley project, which had been in soft prep, prompted rumors this week that the filmmaker might exit. But that has not happened yet, sources said. Deadline revealed in 2019 that Hawley made a deal on Trek. The Fargo and Legion executive producer was driven by his love for the original series. Just like Jar Jar Abrams when he directed the first installment. That's not true.
When I was a kid, I never liked Star Trek when I was a kid. Growing up, I always thought it was, honestly, I couldn't get into it. I tried, I'd watch episodes, but it always felt too philosophical for me.
What we're hearing is that both the Hawley pick, which calls for a new cast and might be about a deadly virus, which might feel awkward given current circumstances, and the Smith version, Tarantino dropped out as director. No, he was never going to direct, but the project is still viable based on an episode of the classic Star Trek series that takes place largely earthbound in a 30s gangster setting. A piece of the action might serve the franchise best as Logan-like spin-offs when the core franchise has been revitalized. So there is an executive at Paramount, which is CBS Viacom, admitting the core of the Star Trek franchise needs to be revitalized. The day after they premiere Star Trek Lower Decks, the day after they start the 23 weeks of Alex Kurtzman's Star Trek, which is supposed to be under one big umbrella since Paramount, CBS, and Viacom have all merged. These decisions will take place over the next few weeks, revitalizing the core of the Star Trek franchise. And then they follow it up with this paragraph. Star Trek continues to be a monster franchise for Viacom CBS, so they want to make sure they get it right.
My brain hurts!
Yet, I think we might know why they need to revitalize the core of the Star Trek franchise. Star Trek Discovery Season 1 has a 51% audience score. Star Trek Discovery Season 2 has a 36% audience score. Star Trek Picard Season 1 has a 57% audience score, and it started out at 86%. And now we have Star Trek Lower Decks at a 33% audience score, and it was 35% when I started recording this video. Despite CBS sending out little gift baskets to get the shills to praise their latest offering from Star Trek, It doesn't look like too many people are buying this one, not even the critics. Currently, it's sitting at 63% with the critics, but if you go to the top critics, it's at 33%. And it looks like they're starting to notice what we have known all along. This franchise is directionless. Before we get to the people, let's hear from some of these top critics. Mike Hale, New York Times. It's a smooth and zippy package. No, it's not. But it doesn't register very strongly as either a geek fest or a transgressive satire, which is another way of saying it's not all that funny. Wherever it's going, it's not doing it very boldly. God, and even for reviews I agree with, they're pretentious as hell, especially for something like Lower Decks. Roxana Hadidi from RogerEbert.com. Lower Decks is amusing but slight and needs a clear course forward to demonstrate whether the angle it brings to Star Trek has singularity or longevity. Daniel D'Addario from Variety. If the joke of Lower Decks is that its characters on a random ship doing cleanup work somewhere in the galaxy fall short of demanding a show about their adventures, it's not hard to agree. Alan Sepinwall. Discovery and Picard both had their moments. Not really. But those series, like Lower Decks, are most effective when merely evoking nostalgia for Trek shows of generations past, rather than when any of them try to do their own thing. Noah Gittell, The Guardian. Lower Decks is a little too breezy for its own good, and it moves so quickly through its various plots, each episode feels like it was fastidiously edited to remove any dead air, that it leaves no lasting impression. It's good to see that the shills are waking up, but there might be something behind this. Zach Handlin is spot on with his review. There's been a glut of new Trek content recently, and all of it has struggled to varying degrees to justify its existence as more than just a brand extension. The Lower Decks is no exception. And that's how far this franchise has fallen. It is simply brand. It is simply product, and it's not even good at that. They can't even give stuff away right. That is a noticeable difference between the top critics and the regular critics, 62% to 33%. I wonder what the difference was, and I hope it wasn't just this. There are people walking the streets of the Tenderloin here in lovely downtown San Francisco, working the world's oldest profession, that care more about their integrity than the average critic. And that shows you how bad things are at CBS Viacom right now. They can't even afford to pay off the top critics. And just to pile on a little bit more, to date, Star Trek Lower Decks does not have international distribution. Exclusive: Star Trek Lower Decks international distribution stalled due to CBS All Access rebrand. This is the original statement from the showrunner Mike McMahon. I want everyone in the world to be able to see this show. CBS wants all you guys to see it too. Unfortunately for all of you guys, not everyone in the world wants to see your show. As a matter of fact, most people in the world don't want to see your show. We're good with it. The reason for the delay is squarely because of the beer bug, which altered production timelines dramatically. A lot of what we're doing unexpectedly got shifted 2 months earlier because they were juggling around schedules and stuff. But now we have another excuse. I'm sorry, reason provided. The truth is that the lack of international distribution for Star Trek Lower Decks has to do with the rebranding Viacom CBS is doing for their streaming service. The plan is to overhaul their CBS All Access streamer with a new name. How about CBS All Ass? I thought that was good. A new program design, a competitive price, new content, and most importantly, international distribution. How about better Star Trek? And yes, I know Rotten Tomatoes does suck and the numbers are low, but it's very consistent with all of the other Star Trek series, and considering CBS All Ass hides all of their numbers, this is the only way we can find out what an actual audience thinks. And if you go over and take a look at Metacritic, it's not doing much better. All right, enough of that. Let's get to the people. Jeremy L., 1 star, awful. Just plain awful. Humor is ridiculous, unfunny, and does not act as a parody of Star Trek at all. I would use the first episode as an example of how not to do an animated show, or any show for that matter. Eric E., 1.5 stars. It would be a decent show if they only got rid of Mariner. The animation is a garbage style. Please don't disregard core Star Trek principles like the Prime Directive. They don't give a crap about any of that. This is Kurtzman Trek. It's fake Trek. It's star-wrecked. R.I.P. Star Trek. Michael K. Half-star, made by people who hate the TNG and DS9 style Star Trek for people that don't care or know about Star Trek. The idea that this is a good parody is just ridiculous. Watch The Orville for having a real Star Trek satire experience instead of this. Rodney S. Half-star, Lower Decks is bad, really bad. I didn't think current Star Trek could get any worse than Picard, but then again, I didn't think Picard could get any worse than Discovery. CBS, please end your license or whatever the agreement is with Secret Hideout. They have destroyed the Star Trek brand. I wonder what Star Trek would be today if Brian Fuller hadn't been fired by Alex Kurtzman. Kurtzman Trek isn't Trek. Star Trek, the original series, was a hopeful show. This isn't that. John D., half-star, utter garbage, insulting to fans of Trek. It's difficult to tell who this was created for and why they spent the money. Scott R., 1.5 stars. Trek trying to be Final Space and Family Guy and Rick and Morty. It doesn't know what it wants to be except everything Star Trek isn't. Ernie T., 1.5 stars. It's fine for what it is, but why did they make this into Star Trek? This isn't what Trek needs. Talking over one another isn't funny and very forgettable characters. Jeremy A., half-star. It's bad. It's really bad. People who can't write comedy shouldn't try and write comedy, especially for Star Trek, which habitually takes itself quite seriously. It's a shame when the fan-made Star Treks are so much better than the official Star Trek CBS comes out with. Thomas L., half-star. This show isn't worth your time. Just pass it up. This is just a mock-up of Star Trek with a coating of Rick and Morty paint thrown on it, so the "it's a kid show" defense isn't going to hold any water. The premise is as thin as the paper they used to write this garbage script. Heck, if CBS had to hide the like to dislike bar and lock all comments, that should have been a sign for even one that this was trash. The network itself had no faith in it. Gerard G., half-star. Who was this for? Rick and Morty fans? Nope, it wasn't funny. Star Trek fans? Nope, it wasn't intellectually Trekky. The characters were bland, unfunny, and uninspiring. The jokes feel like they were conceived in seconds and never questioned for their boring, crude, unfunny nature. Wow, a character is naked now. That's the joke. Laugh, please. Looks like Gerard took a little trip to Tortuga to view the show. I had to technological techniques to even view the show. No international distributor was willing to pay and give it airtime. I love the fact that people are bringing up in their Rotten Tomatoes reviews that Star Trek Lower Decks does not have international distribution. That's beautiful. Everybody knows this show is failing. CBS just refuses to admit it, although they did just have an executive say that Star Trek needs to be rebooted, retooled. It needs to be revitalized. Why is that if Kurtzman Trek is doing so well? Well, the reason is it's not. I can't really add to what those great fans put in the Rotten Tomatoes reviews, so we'll leave it right here. I just want to go out with a little flex, and I don't do that very much. I think constant flexing is the domain of the insecure, but once in a while, I guess it's okay, especially when yours truly crushes Wesley Crusher, defeats Will Wheaton right here on this platform. Cheers, Jack Beers, for finding and pointing out that my Star Trek Lower Decks review got more views than the Ready Room over on CBS All Access, hosted by Will Wheaton. Love you guys. Everyone, have a great day. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, well, shut up, Wesley, and I'll see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.